This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And folks, here we are on September the 1st, 2022, and we're getting the month off great because we're getting the month off with a bang because we're telling you, don't go into the woods. Don't go into the woods. I mean, when I was young, I used to go into the woods all the time, but after seeing all kinds of horror movies, bad things happen in the woods. Folks, these two were recommended very strongly to me by Tommy Kovac from Splat from the Past, who said very nice things about them, and I was like, yes, absolutely. I'd love to have them on. We have a fellow bird watcher, I put little air quotes here, Mr. Jonathan Bliss, and we have a painter with a kid that's very lucky in the film, Cecilia Fannon. Welcome, you two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Wow, it's great to have you both on here. I gotta say, first and foremost, Tommy Kovac gave me a little bit of info on you two, because originally he mentioned you, Cecilia, and he says you can have Jonathan Bliss on, her husband, as well, also in the film. It always amazes me because today marriages are like, well, we had an argument, divorce.
Yeah.
It amazes me when I gotta say congratulations to anybody whose marriage survives as long as it does. How long have you two been married, and what is your secret?
49 years. We've been married for 49 years.
And we've been living together for 50. So,
yeah. But we'll celebrate our literal anniversary in June of next year.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Can you imagine half a century?
That is wonderful.
We're still here, and we don't use walkers or anything.
No, we're still, having.
Also, we were very young.
Yeah.
Well, who needs walkers? Look at the guy in the wheelchair and don't go into the woods. He was trying so hard to get out. Holy cow. You know what? I know what the real secret to your successful marriage was. See, because one of you goes bird watching and the other one paints.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Oh, you're gonna hear a few jokes about that, but what is your secret
about marriage or about?
Yeah,
I think compromise, or there's an element of kindness and an unwillingness to pull somebody else down, and I think people are so quick to criticize and say you fill in the blank did this, and of course I say that, and of course John says it far less, but we also are able to apologize.
Yes, and I think we're obnoxiously articulate, so that means we can usually transcend an emotional problem by trying to make it as eloquently articulate as we possibly can, so we understand each other, and so we can talk most things out. Neither one of us has a fuse, so I think that we probably there's a gallimaufry of reasons why people manage to stay together, and I think we hit the big time. We hit the big casino because we have.
I think there is an element to being married young, and which is that you haven't been shaped by something, and your expectations of another person, are not so great, because we weren't that far away from I was not far away at all from the parental home. I think I was about 6 months away. And John was a little bit older and I hadn't even finished college. So there is that element of we didn't have preconceived notions of marriage.
And we also make each other laugh, which is really
That's
important.
Well, you guys made me laugh when I watched this movie. I'll tell you.
Yeah, I mean, on the set, it was not always a happy experience. I mean, Jim was, he was intense when he was doing this. And behind the scenes, the only person who was really keeping the sort of it down to a low boil was Kathy, his wife at the time, who she was the prop master. She was the stage psychologist. She was the person who was just trying to make everything go.
Casting director.
Yeah.
She costumes. What could she not do?
Yeah, she was amazing. We still have several of her paintings on our wall.
Oh yeah, I should show you one.
She was a brilliant artist. So
she's not with us anymore.
Yeah.
Do you have any of Cecilia's paintings on your wall?
Yeah, I do, as a matter of fact.
I'm sure that was begun, whatever painting that was, by Kathy. I think it's more the barbecue sauce that I was.
Oh, well,
excuse me.
That woman, that was reprehensible. That was, they could have come up with a better prop than that, is all I can say.
Well, I gotta jump back here because before we started recording, and I have to bring this up. You guys have mentioned that you guys knew where I was here in New Brunswick. I'm like, it's not every day my ears hear that, because a lot of people know Vancouver and Toronto, Montreal, but New Brunswick, we're like this little lost place here, and
in this day and age, that's pretty lucky for you because, with the craziness going on in the world, you get to live your life in tranquility. So,
well, except for your job.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I work at the hospital. I'm a cleaner at the hospital, and sometimes I work in the ER, the emergency room. Sometimes I work up in the other units, and I hate doing terminal cleans because terminal cleans, every room you go into that's got the sign on, you gotta mask up, robe up, visors on to go in.
Yes.
And if you got an entire unit of rooms like that, every room you come out of, you gotta take that stuff off, and then you gotta do the same thing in the next room. I'm gonna tell you that gets tiring very quick. Yeah. But
we both worked in the hospital, so we know what that's like.
Not recently, but in hospitals, yeah.
Yeah.
And I applaud you.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I work with some great people. I was just showing Cecilia. I got this the other night at the hospital. It's a Bravo.
Wow.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, it's something that they give out to the workers when somebody or somebody's work is noticed.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of looking in my mailbox at work there one morning when I got off, because I did a lot of overnights over the past week, and it says, "Thank you for always picking up shifts and for always helping when you are needed. You are a great person to have on the team." I'm going to tell you, that made my morning when I saw that.
Yeah, that's really good.
Don't blame you.
Yeah, it was nice to have somebody say, "Hey, thank you. You're doing good." And I'm like, it's nice to be told you're doing good.
Yeah.
And it is good. It's remarkable.
But anyway, I'd like to know, how did you two meet?
Jim? Oh, you mean how did we meet? It was a New Year's party.
A New Year's Day party. No alcohol involved. And I had flown out to Salt Lake City, which is where we eventually met Jim Bryan, to go to school. to the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, and in the dance department, which I was absolutely not good at, but I got in, and I danced, and I thought, oh my God, I don't have, you have to have a certain figure. I don't mean like shapely. I mean, you have to have your muscles aligned in a certain way. And I knew I didn't. I just had a lot of rhythm and want. And anyway, I met John on the very first day. And how can I say this? I had already decided I would never get married. I don't know where I get that idea, but you know, my dating life had been wretched, and not extensive, but wretched.
And you weren't prepared to have a good time either.
No, and I remember my sister saying to me, I was living temporarily with my sister and her husband, and she said, oh, John is wonderful. He went to Yale, and his brother went to Harvard, and his sister is in Radcliffe. And I said to her, being a New York City slicker, I am not going to babysit. I mean, first of all, it was an attitude. I had to develop an attitude quickly to compete with, the juggernaut of Ivy League. Anyway, with that attitude, I approached him, and she said, oh, he's really nice, though. My sister said, you'll like him. And I thought, well, of course I won't, because you said so. And he walked in and extended his hand. And I actually thought, uh-oh. I felt instantly, oh,
Yeah.
all my best laid plans. So that was
it.
What about you?
Well,
Your version of the same.
I knew I was in trouble at that moment because I had not planned ever to be married. I thought, the thing I always said, which was a piece of pure unmitigated crap, was that if I ever met anyone who I like half as much as I like myself, then I'll marry them. But being the narcissist in training at that moment, I never thought that would happen. But there she was, and over the years, there's a wonderful word in Yiddish, bashert, which means a soul mate, and I think we just agree on so many things. It's just
pretty much.
It's crazy. Even the food we dislike the same foods. So it was
cilantro.
Yeah. We both
that was the big connection. We both disliked cilantro.
So,
and of course, you both agreed that you'd never be married. That started it all off.
I know.
Yeah, I think we were not looking. I don't think we were really looking. And that maybe is one of the key things about finding someone, is when you don't really want to. That perhaps is, we meet so many desperate human beings over the course of our lives. People who so desperately want to meet someone and who are desperately lonely. And it makes it so much harder to find someone when you're in that situation. You really have to be kind of not pleased maybe, but comfortable with the way you already are. And also, I think being young, as Cecilia said, is really important. As you get older, you get more set in your ways. It's more difficult for you.
Yeah, you bring all this baggage, and
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if that answered the question. I'm never sure if people really want to hear it, or sometimes I feel almost guilty for being so lucky, and that's how I feel in my life, in my love life. There have been moments where I don't feel so lucky in other parts of my life, but mostly enormously lucky.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, you know what? It's Don't Go Into the Woods. That film, of course, came out in 1981, I believe it was, and I would have been 9 years old that year. And I didn't see it then, obviously, but nonetheless, it's one of those movies a lot of people classify as so bad it's good, you know? And I'm going to say there's bad movies. I'll give you an example. I think Pearl Harbor was a terrible movie. There's nothing about that movie I can even find fun.
Yeah.
I thought it was garbage all the
Yeah.
way, you know, where then you got other movies that are classified as so bad they're good. Those are the ones you get together with your friends and you have a good time and you laugh at elements of the film. The Room is a good example
Yeah.
of that because Tommy Wiseau was my very first podcast guest, so I gotta bring that up.
Oh,
The
really?
Yeah, The Room, and then there was stuff like then there's stuff like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, which I love that. And there's something kind of special about movies like that. And I actually gave myself a refresher on Don't Go Into the Woods before this interview, and I was like, wow, this is actually kind of funny. I had like even the scene, especially the scene, like it all takes place, of course, in the woods. And you got somebody that's hacking up all these people, but you got people just randomly walking around throughout. I mean, you got one poor guy who just happens to find the stick with the jingly stuff on it, and he ends up just accidentally impaled by the heroes of the movie who think he's a villain when he's coming. I'm like, oh, that poor guy. He
Yeah.
picked the wrong day to go hiking. And then you
It's
get like the guy in the wheelchair, especially. It's hard. Like, what's he doing in a wheelchair out in the middle of the woods? Those are questions you gotta just throw out of your mind and just listen. He falls down the hill, and I shouldn't laugh at that. Especially where I work in the hospital, I should not laugh at that. But this guy was bound to get up the hill, only to get his head lopped off. And when his head gets lopped off, I didn't even have time to sympathize. It's like that was odd.
He was
I
over.
don't know. I guess that's one of your shock openings,
Yes, that's right.
And what do you do after that? I mean, everything is sort of downhill after the
I
head
think
removal.
Kathy had to go down to get to the hospital supply store and rented one of those, or did she just find it somewhere?
Oh, the hospital, the wheelchair.
Yeah, the wheelchair. It was just
Yeah, I remember her getting it. Now this is not just your woods like the Vienna woods, which are sort of rolling and small and some nice spiky trees. This is a canyon. This is a Wasatch Canyon with some of the wickedest steep climbs, and downhill was just simply awful. And I wore high heels to get up and to get down, and with zip up. I mean, they were tight. When I think about it,
gosh.
when I think about the orthopedic nightmare, when I think about how Jim could have been sued for the wretched conditions.
Yeah.
And it was 100 degrees, which it almost is here today, but we're not outside filming high up in a canyon at 8,000 feet. We were about 75, 8,000 feet.
Yeah.
Can you believe this?
Mhm.
Oh, it was no water anywhere.
No, it was completely dry.
I don't know what they did about SAG, because I think there were two SAG actors in the movie. So you have to have when you have SAG actors, you have to have SAG representation.
Who are the SAG actors? I'm kind of missing on that.
I don't know which there were two. I know that there were.
Yeah, I just think that they were, like so many actors in Hollywood, they were perpetually out of work. They were
Doesn't matter.
They were just looking
if you get caught by
Yeah,
SAG, you're
I
in
know.
trouble. I later went to UCLA Film School for a master's degree myself, and I was assistant AD on movies, and if you didn't have SAG, they shut you down, and you're in a lot of hot water.
But this was
But
so
you know, this was somewhere in a canyon.
this was Big Cottonwood Canyon, so yeah.
And the actors themselves can be blackballed from SAG. At least at the time, it used to be very, very strict. I think it still is. About once you're SAG, you can't work in this non-professional. There's so many rules that I won't bore you with them, but there we were with ketchup and no water and electrical things and nearly getting electrocuted and storms coming across at night. It was really a scary film.
And of course,
It was scary in a way that had nothing to do with the film.
and of course, what he was using for film stock were the ends of stuff that he had gotten from, I think it was Technicolor. I'm
Little
not sure.
bits in a bag, and he would go under this black velvet hood. I mean, we remember this like it was yesterday. It was horrendous.
And if his Araflex camera hadn't really continued to work appropriately, it would have been the end of everything. But so every 10 minutes, we'd have to stop shooting so that he could reload with another piece of like 500 feet or 100, 1,000 feet of film, which is obviously not the way you're supposed to do it. And then of course we had the sound man, who usually, I was the sound man sometimes, and also holding what passed for a boom mic, and it was hilarious. And of course the temperature rocketing up and rocketing down. What?
Keep talking. I just thought of something.
What? We've got something. Oh, God help us. Mementos from the past. What?
Yeah, you're gonna love this. I have an artifact for you.
Oh, wow.
Oh, this is a promo I did.
Look at that.
A promo
That
I
Jim
did.
Bryan did. How do you like
Mystery.
that? And this is moi. You can
Look
see
at that.
you can see the cheekbones.
Oh, I like that. Look
So
at
that
that.
was taken by these were, I believe, moving, and they weren't really stills, but he just took them out of some film and gave us those pieces.
Yeah.
Aren't they great?
Yes, they are. Absolutely.
The time machine.
Well, Jim Bryan sounds like he was very resourceful under the limitations that he had, you
Oh,
know.
he was.
You kind of need people like that around any job, you know. So some of the practices involved the background of the films in terms of the conditions, you know, I don't agree with, but I have to give him props and credit. He was resourceful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I haven't kept up with his background, but you guys still in touch with him because it sounds like you guys knew him for a
We knew him very well for a long
John
time.
met him.
Yeah, we both worked at Sun Classic Pictures.
He and
Okay.
Jim.
Jim and I worked at SoundCloud, and that was one of those outfits that they did the historical Jesus and a whole bunch of other.
Oh, who's the famous guy?
Oh yes, Grizzly Adams.
Grizzly Adams. Do you remember
That series was done by Sun Classic Pictures, and Jim and I were there during that. Jim was in charge of sound editing, and I was in the solicitations department. I wrote up a lot of the stuff that
He was the literary part.
I was the literary end of it. But so Jim and I got to know each other pretty well, and then I brought in Cecilia, and Jim brought in Kathy, and we had a lot of fun together. Jim was he was trying to get into Hollywood. Like, he'd been there before. It's not as though this was his first run.
Had he done something in Hollywood?
Yeah, well, he had been, an assistant sound director and stuff like that. But, he'd been trying to make it, and he just never really did it. And so this was his attempt to put together an entire movie that he could show the powers that be in Hollywood.
On literally no money.
Yeah.
He when I went to film school, many years after Jim, a mid-career change, for me. Jim had been 25 years before, but it was still the thing to say that the way to break into Hollywood is to write a porno film, because you can film it in the Valley, or a horror film. And that was like the more legitimate way to go. Turns out Jim did both.
He
Well,
did.
you know what? That's how Wes Craven and Sean S. Cunningham started out, and they, of course, were the founders of Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street. So
Yeah.
they started out even before Last House on the Left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did, I think it was Together or something like that, which was, I believe, a porno, but I had not seen it, so I could be jumping my guns there on that. But
Yeah, that's
but
right.
but I mean, a lot of people start out in that, and um, it's not that anybody wants to be dirty or whatnot. People just want to get their foot in the door. They try
Oh,
to
yes.
find the easiest way to do it. And I personally would prefer to do a horror movie over porno, but horror movies, I understand, can be very fun to do, though. I know people that's been part of them, so I know that
It-
process. But at
It's
least
a,
don't, huh?
it's an easier entry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true not only of movies, it's also true of literature. You have a lot of people who, for instance, Dean Koontz was a science fiction writer before he was a horror writer, and he didn't really go anywhere as a science fiction writer. But as soon as he hit horror, that's when it went off
Mm-hmm.
for him.
Yeah.
He just lives over here a little piece from us.
Ah.
Not
This-
that we go over to his house
No.
ever. He never asks us.
No, never.
Why not?
I don't know.
We're pleasant enough.
Yes.
We've been in the business.
Yeah, we have. God knows.
Well, you know what? At least like Jim Bryan may have not made it to big time, so to speak, but this film has a cult following.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that is something to be proud of.
It is.
You got something that has got a Blu-ray release, and people are still talking about it.
Wow.
And yeah, so if you get one film, even out of 10 films,
Yeah.
that people are talking, I always remember. I mean, sad we just lost Olivia Newton-John,
Yeah.
who of course had a massive music career. She never really made it in the movies. Xanadu was a flop, Two of a Kind was a flop, but she had said in an interview, she always has grease.
Yeah.
I loved her optimism about that. She had a film that was big, something that had done well.
Yeah.
We don't go into the woods either.
Oh, look at
Oh,
that.
I love that.
Hi,
Look at
Skittles.
Hello, adorable creature.
Yeah, this is
that.
Skittles.
Skittles is beautiful.
You hear that, Skittles? They're saying you're beautiful.
Yeah.
You are a beauty. Oh, you do my heart good to see you.
You hear that, Skittles?
I love Skittles. Hi, Skittles.
It would do my heart good, Skittles, if you'd clean the apartment up while I'm at work.
I'm
Not
sorry.
in his job description.
No, it's not. I mean, he's the one who's supposed to have
Look at
staff to
that.
do things.
Look at that beauty. Oh, you could be in the movies.
You hear that, Skittles?
Yes, you are beautiful. I
Skittle-
love that cat.
Yeah, I love my kitty. He's a rescue.
Oh, he's a beautiful. Who's
Yeah.
being rescued? You or him, I always say.
You know what? I gotta say, it's always nice having him around. He jumps up on my bed when I'm asleep and goes up and around, and he looks me right in the face, and I'm like, Skittles, your uptime and my uptime are two very different things.
No, it's true. But
Yeah.
an animal like that,
Look, oh,
who needs
there's
who
such
needs friends?
rapport. Look
Yes.
at that
Oh,
rapport.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye, Skittles.
Yeah. Skittles is like, oh, he's still rubbing it. He gets camera shy when I do that, but I'm like, Skittles, when you get around here, I gotta do that. I'm gonna always do that. People react well. Actually, on my YouTube channel, um, I got a playlist of Skittles videos. Yeah, Skittles love that. Yeah. But anyway, nonetheless, as we were saying, if you get one film that actually hits with an audience, you're doing well. So Jim Bryan has nothing to be ashamed of there,
No, not at all.
He's
Yeah.
he's a little hard to find these days. I know the uh, they tried to get him on one of these things.
Oh, Tommy,
Tommy tried to get him on one of these things, and Jim
he
just
said he wasn't well.
he wasn't well. And I think I'll take him at his word.
I think
Mhm.
he's about, I'm sure he's a decade older than I am. So I don't think he's a young person.
Well, you are what, 39?
That's true. That would
Yeah.
make him almost 50. Oh my God.
I just turned 50, actually.
Congratulations.
Well, I don't know. I was greeted in the mail with a paper that says, "You turned 50, time to think about your colonoscopy."
Oh, that's not the first thing on my list when I turn 50 that I think about.
Yeah, I'm like, "Gee, thank you. How about happy birthday?"
Yeah.
I know. It's
Yeah,
remarkable. You've got
yeah,
a lot of happy years.
yep. And I've remained single all those 50 years, and I used to look, I don't anymore. I'm pretty satisfied with my life. I got Skittles here.
Yeah.
Yeah, got Skittles here. But I enjoy doing this. Now, this right here, I didn't start doing this podcast till 2015, I used to do it at the station on the university campus here, CHSR, and I still do a show there. But when COVID hit, it was actually one of my guests that suggested Zoom because
Hmm.
I had no way of doing this because I always did it at the station by phone. I was like, you know what? This is nice because I could schedule these at my leisure and not have to see if the studio is free for me to record. I kind of like this.
So how did you get started? Can I ask a question?
Sure.
In being, is it film in particular that you do, or is it horror film, or is it broader than that, a broader?
Everything. Everything. You know, Actually, it's funny. I mentioned Olivia Newton-John. I was in talks with her manager to get her on here for the
Hmm.
last couple of years. And because of her declining health, nothing was concrete. They were going to do something for the 40th anniversary of the song "Physical,"
Yeah.
and what they were doing with that had to be canceled because of her declining health. And
Right.
when she passed away, number one, huge loss.
Hmm.
I grew up listening to her, but it's like, you know what? She would have given me a lot of clout had I had her on here too.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know, um, at least her manager wasn't jerking me around. I mean, you don't want somebody to come on a podcast when they're not well, obviously,
Yeah.
so I g- you know I it just wasn't meant to be, I guess, but it would have been so cool had it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but started out reviewing movies, which I did started in 1996, and I
Wow.
didn't start at CHSR till 2005 when I volunteer there, and it's a campus station, and my best friend Colin had suggested it to me, and I called them up. A program manager at the time said they didn't have a film critic, you know. So I met them and did an orientation, and I got a show on there. And I used to do film reviews and play music. but I ended up through a former acquaintance in 2015 an interview with Tommy Wiseau from The Room, and it was like that experience was so interesting. It was like, who else can I do this with?
Yeah.
And here you guys are now. Uh,
I don't think we rise to the level of Olivia
Well,
Newton-John.
I don't know. You've had a pretty interesting career.
I have.
Well,
She worked with Leonard Nimoy for quite a while,
there you go.
you know.
There you
And
go.
Interesting.
But I'll say this. The Let me see. I'll bring it up here. Won't of course I'm just seeing what number, because this year alone you're number 126 this year, but not quite my record, but getting there. Yeah, number 654 total interviews I've done since
Wow.
2015, so I kind of like doing this.
you must, otherwise you wouldn't do it, you know.
Yep. And where I now work at the hospital as a cleaner, it's kind of nice to have something like this on the side I can do, where uh, it's nice and relaxing. I get to talk about things I enjoy talking about, like people in the industry, and yeah, it's quite a lot of fun. But anyway, you two both end up in the film. Don't go into the woods. And what's funny to me is that you're both in separate scenes. You're not like that hiking couple where you got the woman, don't run ahead of me. You're getting too far ahead.
See, that was one of the few tropes we didn't have in the movie. It seemed like they tried every single formula piece they could find. Um, you know, and
Yeah.
it must have worked for some people, for a lot of people, because it's generated enough nostalgia that we've had now 2 interviews.
Part of it is the woods.
The woods.
The woods,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
which was much more rugged than any woods.
But it seemed to me at the time that it was so unusual to have someone spend all this capital. You can only do this kind of thing if you're really motivated to do it. If you are obsessed by it. But I think that's what Hollywood is a place where people who are obsessed go and try to make their dreams possible, and they never take no for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim was one of those people. He spent a tremendous amount of his money putting this thing together.
He did.
He took
and rented out
Yeah.
a huge theater. That picture I showed you of John was in a theater where you could see the concession booth. You can't see it in mine. I'm sort of it's yeah. And so he had to rent this.
Yeah. So that was
You had to rent it. It wasn't given for free.
And even in Salt Lake, that was an outlet.
I think that was a promotional trailer for the movie.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And it was at the Center Theater, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't it?
The Center
And it's
Theater.
huge. It was huge. I don't know if it's still there in Salt Lake, but I remember going to see Barry Lyndon there, which came out approximately the year you were born. And this
Well,
is
3 years after.
was it really 1984?
Yeah.
No, Barry Lyndon came out in 75. I was born in 72.
75.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But nonetheless, Jonathan, you play very, very early victim in the film, the bird watcher, and you are initially the one that they go looking for, the police, the missing bird watcher, and it's kind of funny watching you go through the woods and you hear the noises. I hear this from a lot of characters in the movie, like, huh? Huh? I always find that funny,
I'm one of the world's least gifted actors was born with an overweening
I think
amount
all those was ADR, additional
Oh, it
dialogue.
was done
grunts.
by all kinds, like all the actors, I think, did it, you know. But I
Yeah.
mean, to me, it adds to the fun of the movie, you know.
Yeah.
You know, but you play the bird watcher, who I don't know how many birds you got to watch, but yeah. Speaking of the prop department, they obviously had to get some props after what happens to the bird watcher.
Yes, including a deerstalker hat, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
You still got that?
No.
Oh, no. Those were all Kathy's creations.
Yeah. Yeah. But she just, no, but it was, he had to get rid of my scene early because the rest of the time I was the general factotum going and doing all kinds of other stuff.
But, you know, movies are shot with, there's a reason that in screenplays it's day and night because we had limited time in a canyon the way the sun came over. And I believe it was this time of year, like late August, the beginning of September. So the sun's light is going down when you know, it's behind a mountain. So it's going to go down sooner than if you're by the ocean, obviously. So your time in day is very limited.
Right.
And boy, we did that. I'm trying to think.
What was it, 2 weeks?
2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was at night in
Yeah.
those canyons.
Yeah.
And talk about scary. Going downhill on these vertiginous hills, it was just really scary.
Very few second takes. The secret to
Not
success.
too much film.
And so it was done. And I think Jim's probably spent very little time actually editing it, although he did it himself on a moviola. This is something very few people who are editors today would even know about, a moviola.
Do you know you splice it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
And,
Of course you do.
And so that
Critic.
was amazing. But the whole painful thing only lasted for 2 weeks from our point of view. And he was off. He shuttled between Salt Lake and Los Angeles because he needed to get various kinds of services done over there. And I don't know who did the negative cut or even if they bothered with
Someplace
the negative cut.
in Los Angeles. Had to be, I think. This is my recollection. He also at the time I think he started to teach, I don't know, I guess production classes at Weber State College in Utah. And he went back to Los Angeles and he was constantly getting things for money. And I remember they kept changing the dates to release that film. You know, I think it was on 2 weekends and it was very exciting to go.
Well, Cecilia, of course, you play a painter in the movie, and you're the one that has a kid with you too. And I was actually surprised when I initially watched this that the kid actually got to survive the movie, but
Oh,
I don't know what the
he grew up to be a psychiatrist. He takes care of people with.
yeah, I bet she probably needed one. Sitting there with at the end of that film when you see that shot of her, you know, you probably needed a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, you're getting set up, and of course it's funny because when I was talking to Tommy Kovac, you know, I told him that I had this interview scheduled. He sent me a still shot of you from the movie. Of course, that famous shot where your head is over top of the paint
Oh yeah.
set up there, and he puts the caption underneath. He says, "Isn't it beautiful?"
Yeah. She's never been able to have anything with barbecue sauce on it since.
So it's barbecue sauce and glycerin. And there were many takes of that, unfortunately. And that went into I had beautiful, thick, red hair.
I loved your hair, yeah. In that movie,
It's
beautiful.
quite something. And it was very hot
Mhm.
and no access to water. And I was wired up behind my back and through my blouse and, you know, up this way, but behind my neck so you didn't see it. And it would go into my hair and in my scalp. And I had to wait for hours before I went down the mountain, and I couldn't get it out. And half of my face was terribly burned from the barbecue sauce, because
For the water.
you put that red pepper in there and you leave it on for hours.
And
So
vinegar.
I got scared because I thought my scalp was horribly burned. It was, so I remember Kathy mixing the glycerin and squishing it up, and guys would pump when Jim was pump, like these little old fashioned blood pressure cuff things to pump that stuff out, and, coming out of my mouth, appearing to come out of my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, barbecue, anybody, the word barbecue is like, no, thanks.
I love barbecue sauce on the crust of steak, and oops, I shouldn't be saying that. Maybe chicken, that Jonathan happens to spot in his binoculars.
The flying chicken.
There you go. But nonetheless, I'm not even sure what the point was in the scene to have the baby there. They could have just had you go up and do your painting, but they maybe they wanted to open it up for a possible sequel. I don't know, but
The guy who theoretically did the script, I think his name was Garth,
mhm.
and he it was just a bunch of lined pages, and it's just this great big sheaf
I've forgotten this. That's true.
of
Garth Eliason,
handwritten,
yeah.
it's just handwritten stuff. And I don't know whether Jim changed it very much, but because Garth had put some money into this.
Mhm.
So he actually had, I think he had say on some of the creative stuff that was in it. So and so whether
I guess that was also not
I think Jim
a
was
Writers Guild contract.
exactly, but Jim was cynical enough to realize that the plot had nothing to do with this. It was how many times can you scare an audience? And so the end with the baby is supposed to become a murderer in some future scenario or something like that, or try
That's
to make
all he knows.
yeah, that's all
That's
he
all
knows.
he's seen in
Yes.
his 1.5 years on planet Earth.
But that was the way it went. So no, it's nonsensical, but I can think, and you can too, of so many movies that come out of that are made for over $100 million that make no sense at all.
Oh yeah, I've seen a few of those. I've seen a number of those.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, you say the baby grew up to be a psychiatrist.
That
was me being funny.
The baby grows up to be a serial killer.
Have you seen her since?
None of the actors. We have not seen.
No, we didn't see them from the moment of the rap. They held themselves as if they were, I kid you not, Hollywood elite.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I subsequently did work with people in Hollywood. For my very first play, I was directed by, oh my God, what's her name? In the Big Chill.
Joe.
Who was in the Big Chill?
Jo Beth Williams.
Jo Beth Williams.
And
okay, yeah.
And I met, and immediately, the minute you kind of click, then suddenly I met all of these people. And when I met Leonard Nimoy, then I met everybody in, the Star Trek world,
including John Delancey, who became a friend.
Yeah, I mean, but so what happens is that, to me, when I did that, it was not quite starstruck, but like, wow. But they just talk to you like you're normal people because they're normal people. Whereas when these people came from, they must have held themselves in such a way, and they would eat separately as if we were, lower people, because they were from Hollywood, you see. But when I actually came to Hollywood, people act just normal.
Yeah.
Perfectly normal. I mean, I would have Leonard Nimoy call me up asking me what kind of sandwich I would like for lunch and what kind of bread I would like it on, and did I like it toasted, to have, so that we could have I'm not kidding. A meeting when
Wow.
I got there. Well, one of the reasons is that at the time, this is in 1998 and 1999, there were still people lined up outside any place that he went to, so that our meeting time would be eaten up by people that he would graciously sign autographs, so he would order in. But that's how people are. Do you want Diet Coke? Do you have you like Diet Coke, right? Or they have this place, they have this great Chinese chicken salad. Isn't that your favorite? You know, so people are just normal here, as opposed to those people. Do you remember this? They
Yeah,
held themselves apart as if they were really special.
So
And I thought at the time that the script was, don't tell Garth, but go ahead and tell him, it was wretched. And I was not a movie critic, but I loved the movies, and I just thought, this is not good. Should follow some, you know, story. Well, I guess, you know, it kept pushing on, you know, murder. Frankly, he cut from murder to murder to murder. It wasn't big on dialogue. It was action, 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 which is what it should have been.
You know, it's interesting you talk about these people being normal people, because I lived here my entire life, and I'd never really been far from New Brunswick. But when I started doing this podcast, I had an actress, Lisa Langlois from the movie Class of 1984. She's been on here twice. And on her second interview, we got talking about travel, because she just moved back to Toronto from Los Angeles, and she asked what was stopping me, and I made this excuse or that excuse, and she invited me to assist her at Horrorama in Toronto.
Wow.
And I've been going to Toronto every year since, and she and I have remained friends. Actually, she called me yesterday when I had a moment, a break at the hospital. She gave me a call, and it was just nice to hear from her. And because she's doing a con this fall that I'm going to assist her at. And I remember when meeting her, you know, um, a lot of the questions she asked a lot of questions about New Brunswick because she'd never been here. And we didn't talk a whole lot about the industry, you know. And it's interesting, you mentioned about Leonard Nimoy, because I've been finding that a lot about people, you know, like like when I interviewed Caroline Monroe, you know, and she mentioned at the end of the interview she's gonna walk her dogs, you know.
Yeah.
She's not having her a handler do it. She
no.
gonna walk her dogs, you know. And I'm like, you know, that is so cool, you know, um, to hear stuff like that. So yeah, they're normal people.
Yeah.
Well, some of them anyway.
No,
But
but I do think and they want to embrace your normalcy. Like, I
mhm.
remember when we met Karen Black. Do you know
Yeah.
who Karen Black? She's also gone on to her reward, but she couldn't wait to find out what you had to say. And who played the captain on Star Trek? The
Oh, William Shatner?
no, the female
Oh, Kate.
Kate
Kate
Mulgrew.
Milgrew, yeah.
I sat next to Kate at a party in Hollywood, and she immediately, she had never met me. It was through a mutual friend, and she said, I understand that you like books. And for the next 2 hours, we talked about books. And there was alcohol involved. And she called me the next day and she said, I think I had too much to drink. You know, she's just so normal. And we continued our literary conversation. And you talked about getting that nice note in the hospital.
Mhm.
I was in theater before. I was in you know, the Leonard Nimoy world. And I had seen this woman who did a play called Wit. And I thought she was so fantastic. And I thought she'd be great in a play I wrote. And somebody knew somebody who called up. They said, you should call Pat. She's appearing. And it was this big theater in Hollywood, starring as something famous. You should call her up. She could be in your play. So I called her up and I thought, okay, and I called her up and, I was trembling. And she said, of course I would love to, very British. And she came up, she commuted from being in a San Diego playhouse every night to be in my play in Los Angeles. It's a very long commute. And at that, I was just blown away. And we became very close friends, like you and this woman, realizing that just like me, they're just like me. And you have to sort of remember that.
Isn't it cool? Isn't
It
it
is,
cool? Yeah. Yeah.
especially the lifelong friendship part and not
Yep.
just passing a thing.
Well, one of my favorite things was Gene Simmons and you.
Oh yeah. So Gene Simmons, not the Kiss person, but Gene Simmons, the actress. Gosh, I've known a lot of people who've gone on to their reward.
Yeah, unfortunately.
She was in something I was doing for Leonard when he had Rumble Seat Productions in adapting all of these scary things into
A&E
for television. And I was writing them.
or Sci-Fi Channel.
Sci-Fi Channel. His was the Rumble Seat Productions, but anyway, in one of them we got landed Gene Simmons to be in this, and she was this absolute drop dead gorgeous woman. Still, when I met her, she was in her early 70s, and she used to arrive in Hollywood with her 6 poodles and the whole entourage and the luggage, and very, very, she had made a smash hit and was in all of those Gladiator movies,
Like the
Sandals movies, whatever they called, and other things, those epics, and then a million other things. And she was, I sat down next to her and I said, "Hi, I'm helping adapt this," and she said, "Oh, darling, do you have any idea where they get some coffee? Some good coffee?" And I said, "Oh yeah, don't drink the coffee here. It's with my New York accent. Don't drink it here. It's terrible. It's like eating shit, paint." And she said, "Oh, darling, how wonderful that you're so." And from then on, we spoke, and we used to speak on the phone for some time afterwards. And she introduced me to her
best friend.
Her best friend, who, when she came to the United States, happened to be a woman who looked absolutely nothing like her, and was her double, because they had a similar, very tiny figure. I mean, I don't think that she topped 5'1", and shapely, but like a miniature. And this woman was her body double, and they became the closest friends for life. I used to want to write that story. I thought it would be a great story because of their friendship. I mean, they didn't do anything without one another, because both their husbands had subsequently died, but their friendship continued on. So she was wonderful. And she told me all these Hollywood dirt stories.
Oh God.
About all these famous, actors from the 40s and who preyed on her, or she slept with, or some tale. And she would say, "What would you like to know?" She was wonderful.
Well, talk about because of course Jim Bryan, of course, brought in Jonathan Bliss into this movie. So Jonathan, you brought Cecilia into this movie. Am I correct?
Well, it was one of those situations where it was a bit like, one of those Andy Hardy things where, gee, let's do a show, and everyone's like that. And Jim, I think Jim wanted to do this. So I think we're over at their house.
We were friendly with them.
Yeah, we were out over at their house, and he said, "How would you like to do a movie?" And he had that impish, that almost diabolical smile. It's kind of verged on a smirk.
Oh no, he laughed all the time.
Yeah, he did.
This sort of the subterranean laugh.
And he said,
"For no money" was probably what the giggle was about.
That was the bottom line. It's no money. But I think
sure,
why not? We were young, we were stupid, we were ready for it. And so that's how he got us into it. And I think that it helped that we knew him. And
of course,
but he brought in all these other people that had somehow he managed to lasso into doing this thing. And
yeah, I think I also helped to make some of the food, if I recall.
Oh, yes, yes.
Nice.
Schlepping lasagna
Yeah,
up the
that's-
canyon. Oh
that's
my
no-
God.
Yes. We did many things for that production.
It was, by and large, I would say it was fun. It was very, very hectic. I don't think that there's a movie shoot. Did you ever hear of anyone that you've spoken to who said, "Oh, it was a cinch"? Something always goes wrong. Something always catastrophic happens. Hopefully, it's not like poor Alec Baldwin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Awful.
but it's
I
kind of,
met Alec Baldwin.
yeah,
He's a very nice man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a strange thing to say, but he was very formal and very nice and polite and interested in what, the meeting from momentarily. I wasn't meeting him on purpose, it was accidental. But he took the time to find out what you're doing here, what you're working on. Very nice to meet you. And he just struck me as someone who wasn't at all like he is depicted in the tabloids.
Mm-hmm. Who else have you guys met?
a lot of people. A lot of people, both
Ooh, I mean,
above the line and below the line. Mostly below the line, I gotta say.
Mm-hmm.
I've met people through theater, but some of them you wouldn't know. And also, I used to dance, so I was a tap dancer. So I had classes from Savion Glover and Gregory Hines and Sandman Sam. So there's that sort of famous group. And then, there's a theater sort of famous group, and then there's the movies and accidental, but you brush up momentarily against people, and then the trains leave the station and you go that way, and
It's
your
true.
train's going that way.
I've been around when Cecilia is directing plays, for example, which I think of all the things she's done, I think she enjoys it the most. And she loves the camaraderie and the collaborative creativity that goes on with plays.
Yeah.
And then, and everybody loves everybody else, and there are embraces all around, and you have then you have the final night party.
But theater is different. I mean, in that movies are so vast. Even in Jim Bryant's small thing, there must have been 25 people involved, which isn't even beginning to be a lot. But you're involving a city, so you don't have that intimacy that you do in theater.
Yeah.
I had it more with the Star Trek, but that was a well-oiled machine. So that was really interesting.
But you lose track. You just do. They're your best friends for a while, and then they have other gigs to do, and they
Theater,
go.
it's 6 weeks, In-N-Out Burger.
But if you meet again, and if you're lucky enough to do another production with them, suddenly they remember you.
Yeah.
Hugs and kisses.
There's a
all
lot
around.
of loyalty.
A lot of loyalty. It's a tough business, and they know it. They don't know how long they're going to be around for it.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to enjoy it while it's there, knowing full well that at any given time, most of the actors out there are going to, only about 20% of them are going to be working.
I know Rich Greenberg.
Yeah.
They're friends.
Mm-hmm.
Rich Greenberg is a theater guy who wrote the play Take Me Out that won the Pulitzer Prize 20 years ago. Was it 25?
Yeah.
And is now being redone, maybe in Canada as well. I don't know, but I know on Broadway. So
Yeah. And
he's a
the man who best man at our wedding, and my college roommate Ron Chernow, who did the Hamilton stuff.
So we met Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, in terms, of course, we know the low budget story behind "Don't Go Into the Woods," but I want to know that cabin that is in the woods, where, of course, the killer is. Was that built there for the movie, or was that something found there?
No, that was just a found object.
Wow.
Because again, it's up a canyon.
Mm-hmm.
And this was not on the flat anywhere or in a meadow. Picture it's alpine.
Yeah.
So we're at 8,000 feet. This is getting up there.
I think it was one of those places that ski patrol people went
I think you're right.
Yeah, to try just, there was equipment around to shoot down huge snow masses so that you could at least plan the avalanches. So that's why it was up there. And we got in. I don't know how we got in. Maybe Jim arranged to have the hut looked after, and we put some stuff inside there. That's where a lot of that stuff took place inside.
Yeah. No, I did like that element, and of course everybody would run into that, and but now were you? I can't remember the name of the actor who played the killer. Do you guys know right off the top of your head?
I'm sorry, I didn't prep for this.
I didn't prep for
Well,
that part either, and
Yeah.
it just kind of, because one of the things I was going to ask was were you guys? Oh yeah, it's this a Tom Drury maniac. Okay. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I've
I
got
found him,
absolutely
Tom Drury.
Yeah, Tom Drury.
Yeah.
See,
But
he wasn't really in the scenes, of course, that we were in. It was the guys holding the thing for me, and some of the person saying, "John, look over here. Look over here. Oh, look, there's a bird. No, over there's a bird. No, looks, So Tom Drury was not near us in those scenes.
Yeah.
so you guys weren't there during his climatic demise, because
I think we
it
only
looked
saw
like
it in the movies.
Maybe behind the set, maybe behind the camera, but otherwise not really there.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, did you guys go to the premiere of the movie? When this
Oh,
came
yes.
Oh,
out?
of course.
What were your
It's
thoughts?
obligatory.
I was excited. I remember being very excited. I think it was in January. I have this recollection it was January. Again, it was a very difficult thing to book a theater because in those days, it was summer, July, or December for Christmas when people went to the movies on that particular day. And I think he had to wait until January. And there was some sort of time frame. And I remember hearing he was out of money and it may not come off, and the problems with the theater, but then it was suddenly up on the marquee. There must be a picture somewhere of that actual theater, and then we went in, and it was exciting. And then we had a party afterwards, and I remember being proud to be a part of it and glad that I lived through it and that my skin didn't come off and my scalp recovered weeks later.
But we obviously we didn't know that it would become
This cult favorite. It's hard to see any of that, isn't it? Maybe
No.
like Olivia Newton-John.
Or Plan 9 from what was
Plan 9 for Outer Space.
Yeah.
Even look at, that movie, The Disaster Artist, about the making of The Room. I mean, look at that, what that's become, it's amazing where some of this, like, there's a lot of people who make a movie as a pot boiler, and then the pot boiler ends up becoming the thing,
Yeah, isn't that true? It's like the flip side of a 45 record.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of movies now that are hailed as classics. At the time, just making a movie, especially with horror movies, that's become a thing,
Jaws is.
Yep.
There it is.
I mean, look at Star Wars.
Jaws.
Yeah.
I still love Jaws, and I love the whole. Doesn't everybody? But the sequence about, is it the Missouri? With Robert Shaw and
the
X number of men,
Indiana
went into the water.
Indianapolis.
Thank you, John.
Oh yeah, I've interviewed a few people from Jaws, so there you go.
Wow. Now I am impressed because this is my favorite. I hate to be in 4 minutes, the phone is going to ring from a Zoom call that we have with our.
Well, you know what? We'll wrap this up because it was wonderful having the two of you come on here and talk about this.
Thank you.
My apologies. I was running a tad late, but I thank you too.
No, that's fine.
It's a hot day.
You did a great interview.
Well, I appreciated having the two of you come on here today and talk about this film. And what a pleasure! Congratulations on 50 years plus of
you.
marriage. You know, that is wonderful. That's something to applaud. You know.
Well, thank you.
Before I
Well,
let
anyway, thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you, and I will thank Tommy
Mhm.
on my next email.
Well, before I let you two go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
No, not at all.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah. Just state your names and say you are listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Tell us when.
When you state your name, say you're part of Don't Go Into the Woods, and then say you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise. Now.
Hi, I'm Cecilia Fannon, and this is
Jonathan Bliss.
And we would like you to tune in to hear Greg on Python's Paradise.
Absolutely.
On Python's Paradise.
Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise. 2 thumbs up. It's awesome.
And folks, don't go into the woods.
Thank you.
Even if you're bird watching or painting or any of that stuff, and don't bring barbecue sauce, for crying out loud. God bless you both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is incredible. Thank you.
Thanks,
You're quite
Greg.
welcome.
You take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.